The restaurant was full of warm lights and quiet music, but near the corner table, a young waitress stood frozen, her eyes wet after a harsh insult. She had only made a small mistake while serving dinner, yet the wealthy man's loud voice cut through the room, turning a simple moment into deep humiliation. As whispers spread across the tables, the embarrassed waitress lowered her eyes, trying to hide the tears forming while everyone pretended not to notice. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments what time is it and where are you watching from. Let's start. Tonight's story begins with a moment no one in that room will ever forget. The arrogant man leaned back in his chair with a cold smile, believing money gave him the right to shame someone who was simply trying to survive. The waitress quietly apologized again, her voice trembling as she picked up the fallen glass, wishing the floor would open and hide her pain. But what the man didn't realize was that someone else in that restaurant had been watching everything very carefully from the shadows. An older man sitting quietly at the bar slowly lifted his eyes, his expression changing the moment he saw the tears on the young woman's face. Unlike the others who stayed silent, his calm stare carried the weight of a past that connected deeply with the struggling waitress. The wealthy man kept talking loudly, unaware that his cruel words were slowly setting into motion something he would soon regret deeply. Because sometimes a single moment of arrogance can awaken a truth powerful enough to turn pride into shame. And before the night inside that restaurant was over, the man who humiliated a poor waitress would discover exactly who had been watching. The room slowly returned to its normal rhythm, but the tension from that humiliating moment still floated heavily in the air. The waitress wiped her tears quickly and forced herself to keep working, because she needed this job more than her pride tonight. Her name was Maya, a young woman carrying the weight of her family's survival quietly on her fragile shoulders. Back home, her sick mother waited for medicine, and her little brother depended on the small tips she earned every long night. That was why she swallowed the humiliation silently, even when the wealthy man's cruel laughter echoed again across the tables. He waved his hand impatiently and demanded another drink, acting as if the waitress was nothing more than part of the furniture. Some customers looked uncomfortable, but no one stepped forward to defend the young woman standing there alone. But across the room, the older man at the bar continued watching with calm, unblinking eyes filled with quiet understanding. He slowly stirred the drink in his glass, his mind clearly thinking about something far deeper than what others could see. Because when he looked at Maya, he didn't just see a waitress being humiliated in public. He saw a reflection of a painful past that had once shaped his own life many years ago. And the longer he watched the arrogant man's behavior, the more certain he became that tonight would not end the way anyone expected. Maya returned to the kitchen for a moment, trying to breathe slowly as she wiped the last tear from her face before anyone could notice. She stared at her reflection in the metal shelf, reminding herself that she had survived harder days than this cruel moment. Out in the dining hall, the wealthy man laughed with his friends, clearly proud of the scene he had created. To him, it was just entertainment, another reminder that power and money placed him above everyone else. But the quiet older man at the bar continued observing everything with careful attention and growing concern. He had not touched his drink for several minutes, his eyes calmly moving between Maya and the arrogant customer. Something about the young waitress reminded him of a promise he had made long ago to someone very important. Years earlier, he had once sworn that if he ever saw someone helpless being humiliated, he would never remain silent. Yet tonight, he waited patiently, because sometimes the right moment to act reveals more truth than anger ever could. Meanwhile, Maya stepped back into the dining hall again, forcing a polite smile as she carried another tray to the same table. Her hands trembled slightly, but she kept moving, determined not to let this man break the dignity she still held inside. What she didn't know was that the quiet observer at the bar had finally decided that the time to step in was very near. Maya walked back toward the same table, carrying another tray, her hands steady now, but the memory of the insult still burning quietly inside her chest. The wealthy man glanced at her again with the same careless arrogance, clearly believing the waitress had already forgotten what happened minutes ago. His friends laughed softly, enjoying the attention, while Maya carefully placed the drinks on the table without saying a single word. For Maya, silence was not weakness tonight. It was the only shield protecting the dignity she refused to completely lose. Across the room, the older man at the bar slowly stood from his seat, adjusting his coat as his eyes remained fixed on the table. The bartender noticed the movement and stepped aside, sensing that something important was about to happen in the quiet restaurant. The older man walked calmly toward the arrogant customer's table, his slow steps carrying a quiet authority few people noticed yet. When he finally reached the table, the laughter stopped for a moment as everyone looked up at the unexpected stranger. The wealthy man frowned slightly, annoyed that someone had interrupted his evening without permission or invitation. But the calm expression on the older man's face showed no fear, only a quiet seriousness that made the moment strangely heavy. Maya froze near the table, confused and nervous, unsure why this stranger had suddenly decided to stand beside her. What no one in that restaurant realized yet was that the man who had been silently watching carried a truth powerful enough to change everything. The older man stood beside Maya, quietly, his calm presence slowly changing the mood at the table without raising his voice. The wealthy customer looked up with irritation, clearly annoyed that a stranger had stepped into what he considered his private moment. "Is there a problem here?" the arrogant man asked coldly, leaning back as if the entire restaurant still belonged to him. The older man looked at Maya's tearful face first, then slowly turned his eyes toward the man who had humiliated her. His voice was calm but firm when he finally spoke, carrying the kind of quiet authority that made the entire table fall silent. "Sometimes people forget that respect costs nothing," he said, his words steady but heavy with meaning. For the first time that night, the wealthy man's confident smile faded slightly as he studied the stranger more carefully. Something about the man's calm confidence made the room feel different, as if the balance of power had suddenly shifted. Other customers quietly turned their heads, sensing that this moment was becoming something far more serious. Maya stood still beside them, confused and nervous, wondering why this stranger had chosen to defend her tonight. The older man then reached into his coat pocket slowly, pulling out something small that caught the restaurant lights. And in that moment, the arrogant customer began to realize that the quiet man he had ignored all evening might not be an ordinary witness. The small object in the older man's hand was not money or a card, but something that made the arrogant customer's face slowly lose color. It was a simple metal badge, old but respected, the kind that silently carried authority far beyond loud voices or expensive suits. The restaurant manager suddenly stepped forward from behind the counter, his expression changing the moment he saw the badge. He greeted the older man with visible respect, calling him Mr. Harrison, a name that made several people in the room whisper quietly. The wealthy customer frowned, clearly confused, because he had never heard that name before and didn't understand the reaction. But the manager's tone explained everything when he spoke carefully, trying to keep the moment calm and respectful. He told the arrogant man that Mr. Harrison was not just another guest, but the owner of the entire restaurant chain. The laughter that had filled the table earlier vanished instantly, replaced by a heavy silence spreading across the room. The wealthy man's friends slowly stopped smiling, realizing the situation had turned in a direction none of them expected. Maya stood frozen beside them, her eyes wide with disbelief as she looked at the quiet man who had defended her. Mr. Harrison then turned his calm eyes toward the arrogant customer again, his voice steady but impossible to ignore. And what he said next would force the man who humiliated a poor waitress to face a truth he could not escape. The arrogant customer tried to force a laugh, but the sound came out weak and hollow as dozens of eyes in the restaurant quietly turned toward him. Mr. Harrison remained calm, standing beside Maya with quiet dignity, his steady gaze making the wealthy man feel smaller with every passing second. "You humiliated someone who was simply doing her job," Mr. Harrison said slowly, his voice calm yet powerful enough to silence the room.
You don't have to turn
The
around.
wealthy man shifted uneasily in his chair, suddenly realizing the
don't have to
control
see
he
me.
once felt had quietly slipped away.
Just keep going.
His friends no longer laughed beside him, their faces
behind you.
serious now, sensing the heavy truth forming in the air around them. Maya stood silently holding her tray, unsure what to say, her heart racing as the moment grew more intense with every breath. Mr. Harrison gently gestured toward her and spoke again, his words carrying a deep meaning that everyone present could feel. "True character appears when you treat someone with less power," he said, his voice calm but strong inside the silent room. The wealthy man slowly stood from his chair, the arrogance gone from his face as shame quietly replaced the confidence he had earlier. He looked at Maya briefly, his eyes uncertain now, as if he had finally understood the damage his careless pride created. Around them, the restaurant remained silent, every guest watching the moment unfold like a lesson no one expected tonight. And deep inside, the man who once laughed loudly began to feel the slow, painful weight of regret settling over his heart. The wealthy man stood quietly for a moment, the arrogance gone from his face as the heavy silence of the restaurant surrounded him. He slowly turned toward Maya, the young waitress he had humiliated earlier, now unable to ignore the truth of what he had done. I'm sorry," he finally said, his voice far softer than the loud confidence he had shown before. Maya looked at him with surprise, because moments ago he had treated her like she didn't even deserve respect. Mr. Harrison watched calmly beside her, saying nothing, allowing the man to face the weight of his own actions. The wealthy customer lowered his eyes and apologized again, this time with genuine regret that everyone in the room could hear. Some customers quietly nodded, realizing that the lesson tonight was far more powerful than the humiliation that started it. Mr. Harrison then placed a reassuring hand on Maya's shoulder, reminding her that dignity always survives arrogance. He calmly told the man that success means nothing if a person forgets how to treat others with basic human kindness. The restaurant slowly returned to its normal rhythm, but the powerful moment stayed in the hearts of everyone who witnessed it. Maya quietly returned to her work, stronger now, knowing that respect sometimes arrives when you least expect it. The story ends here, but the mystery lives on.
You don't have to
Like,
turn around.
subscribe, and return for the next unforgettable journey.